Discipline is one of those things most people talk about, but very few actually live. It's a rare decision, not because people can't make it, but because they don't see immediate results. The masses are conditioned to chase what feels good, what brings pleasure now. They're trained by their habits and surroundings to seek comfort instead of character. But discipline doesn't offer comfort up front. It doesn't knock on your door with gifts. It asks you to leave the party early, to set the alarm before everyone else, to do the uncomfortable before you're ready. And that's why only a few ever embrace it. That's why only a few ever taste its rewards. The truth is, discipline starts small. It doesn't need a grand gesture or a dramatic announcement. It begins the moment you decide to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. It's waking up when it would be easier to hit snooze. It's reading the book when the TV is calling. It's going to the gym when nobody is watching. The 1% understand this. They don't negotiate with their feelings. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They create structure where there was none. They design routines that work in silence and produce results in public. And this decision to be disciplined is made every single day, not once, not in January, not just on birthdays or when you're inspired. Every single day. That's what makes it rare, because most people make decisions based on moods, not principles. The 1% operate on values. They've decided that showing up matters more than showing off, that progress beats perfection, that momentum is more powerful than motivation, and they stick with it, not for applause, not for fame, but because they know who they're becoming through the process. Discipline is what separates the talkers from the doers. Everyone says they want to succeed, but not everyone is willing to pay the price. And the price is always paid in daily decisions, in choosing structure over chaos, in choosing growth over ease, in choosing to do what's right, not what's popular. The 1% understand that results are hidden in repetition. And repetition is driven by discipline. They've trained their minds to work when their body is tired, to focus when the world is distracting, to stay on course even when the path gets lonely. There's a kind of power that comes with discipline. It's not loud or flashy. It's not the kind you can post online for quick likes. It's quiet, it's internal, but it changes you. It builds a kind of mental toughness that makes you unstoppable. It teaches you that you don't need external motivation when you have internal commitment. It rewires the way you see challenge. While the masses run from discomfort, the disciplined lean into it. They understand that the struggle is not the enemy, it's the path. And that's why only a few make the decision, because it requires maturity. It requires vision. It requires the ability to delay gratification. To say, no, not now. I'm building something better. It requires you to walk away from shortcuts, to sacrifice the moment for the mission. Most won't do that. Most won't give up a weekend to work on a dream. Most won't trade comfort for conviction. But the 1% will, not because they're better, but because they've decided that the life they want requires a new standard, and discipline is that standard. There's a false belief out there that you need to feel inspired to take action. That's not true. What you need is clarity. Clarity of purpose leads to action, and action builds momentum, and momentum fuels discipline. When you know why you're doing something, it becomes easier to stick to the how. The 1% are not perfect. They fail too, they slip, they get tired, but what they don't do is quit, they realign. They restart, they recover, because discipline is not about being flawless. It's about being consistent. It's about having a personal standard that doesn't bend with circumstance. And the interesting thing is, once you practice discipline long enough, it stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like freedom. Because you're no longer controlled by impulses. You're no longer a slave to comfort. You don't chase pleasure, you create fulfillment. And that's something most people never experience, because they're stuck in the loop of easy decisions and hard consequences. The 1%, however, choose hard decisions and experience easy consequences later. They pay the price upfront and live with compound rewards. That decision, that quiet, private decision to be disciplined, changes everything. It's the decision that reshapes your identity, rewrites your future, and puts you in the small circle of those who don't just wish for success, but live it wishing is easy. It costs nothing. It requires no sacrifice, no discomfort, and no real change. Anyone can sit down with a cup of coffee, stare out the window, and dream about a better life. A better body, a better bank account, a better business, a better future. But dreams without discipline are just fantasies. Most people never move past the wishing stage. They stay there. They like the idea of change more than the reality of it. The idea feels good. The work, not so much the commitment. That's where things start to fall apart. Most people say they want to be successful, but what they really want is the feeling of being successful without the struggle it demands. They want the results without the routine. They want the applause without the grind. But commitment doesn't care how you feel. It's not emotional. It's not part-time. It's not seasonal. Commitment is a promise you make to your future, and it's tested every single day. It shows up in the small choices, in the daily decisions, in the quiet moments when nobody's watching. That's where success is built, not in the big speech, not in the big launch, but in the small, consistent acts of someone who decided they were all in. You see, the few, the 1%, they make a decision early, and it's not just a decision to start. It's a decision to continue. Starting is common. Everyone starts. The gym is full in January. The budget spread sheet looks beautiful on day one. The planner is organized. The ideas are flowing. But come February, come the first setback, the first temptation, the first failure, that's when the crowd thins. That's when you see the difference between those who were interested and those who were committed. Commitment is what keeps you going long after the excitement wears off. It's what carries you through boredom, resistance, and pain. It's not about how loud you start. It's about how long you last. Most people look for motivation. They wait for it. They hope it shows up, but motivation is unreliable. It fades, it changes. It can be gone by lunch. But commitment doesn't ask how you feel. It already decided. That's the difference. When you're committed, you don't need to be convinced. You don't need a cheerleader. You don't need someone to remind you why you started. You already know. You already built your identity around it. It's not what you do, it's who you are. And when that shift happens, your life begins to move in a new direction. The few understand that commitment demands a price. You have to trade comfort for character. You have to give up convenience for consistency. You have to turn down distractions so you can focus. You have to say no, often, so your yes has power. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Commitment is not soft. It's not passive. It asks for your time, your energy, your patience, your courage. It asks you to sacrifice. It asks you to grow. And most people aren't willing to pay that price. They'll flirt with greatness but settle for average. They'll talk about the future, but live stuck in the present. They'll set goals, but never change habits. And so they stay where they are. The committed don't just set goals. They design systems. They don't just write affirmations, they take action. They understand that every day is a vote for who they're becoming, and every skipped workout, every wasted hour, every excuse is a vote in the other direction. That's why they're careful. That's why they're intentional, because they know they're building something. They know their future is being shaped by the decisions they make when nobody's applauding. Most people give up when it gets tough. The few get tougher. The interesting thing is, commitment builds confidence. When you keep your word to yourself, you start trusting yourself. You stop needing approval. You stop doubting your path. You walk differently. You speak differently. Because you know you're becoming the kind of person who finishes what they start. That quiet self-respect is worth more than any praise you'll ever receive from others. It can't be bought. It can't be borrowed. It's earned, and only earned through commitment. It's not that the 1% have more time, more talent, or more luck. It's that they've made a decision most people won't. They've drawn a line in the sand and said, I'm not going back. They don't dabble. They don't just try, they decide, and when you truly decide, the excuses vanish, because once you're committed, everything else is just a detail. You stop wondering if, and you start focusing on how. You stop thinking about quitting and start thinking about adjusting. You stop waiting for life to be easier and start becoming stronger. And that's the thing most people don't realize. You don't rise to the level of your wishes. You fall to the level of your commitment. If your level of commitment is shallow, your results will be the same. But if your commitment is deep, if it's built on discipline, courage, clarity, then no obstacle is too big. No delay is too long. No failure is final, because commitment is not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about getting up again. It's about showing up again. It's about refusing to let go of the vision just because the process got hard. That's the difference. That's the separation line between the many and the few, between the dreamers and the doers, between the 99% who talk and the 1% who finish. Success doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't come wrapped in shiny packages or dramatic moments. It shows up slowly, steadily, through routines that look boring from the outside. The truth is, the people who are admired, envied, even followed, they don't do anything magical. They just do the small things consistently, the ones others overlook, the work that's too simple for the masses to take seriously, the daily disciplines that don't look impressive but quietly build a life others wish they had. The average person is always chasing something new, a new hack, a new method, a shortcut, but the few who actually build wealth, mastery, peace, they understand the power of repetition. They don't change the plan every week. They don't get distracted by shiny objects. They find what works, and then they do it again and again and again. While others get bored and drift, they stay anchored in the repetition, because they know that success hides in the routines most people quit on. Repetition isn't exciting. It doesn't feed the ego. It doesn't get applause, but it builds identity. When you show up and do the work without needing attention, without needing someone to see it, you're telling yourself, this is who I am now. And that identity shift is the real win. Because once you see yourself as someone disciplined, someone consistent, someone focused, then excellence becomes your standard. You don't need to try harder. You simply act from who you are. Most people want change, but they can't stick to the process long enough. They'll work out for 3 days and complain they're not in shape. They'll write for a week and wonder why they're not an author. They'll make 5 calls and say business is hard. But those who really get it, they don't measure success in days. They measure it in years. They understand that anything worthwhile takes time, and they're okay with it. Because they're not chasing speed. They're building something sustainable. Think about how nature works. You don't plant a seed today and harvest a tree tomorrow. There's a season of silence, of waiting, of faith. But if you water it daily, if you show up with consistency, eventually it breaks through. The 1% treat their goals the same way. They don't uproot the seed every other week to check progress. They water it, they nurture it, they keep doing what works, even when it feels like nothing's happening, because they trust the process. Success isn't a single act. It's the sum of thousands of boring decisions stacked over time. It's choosing water instead of soda, reading instead of scrolling, writing one more page when your mind wants to rest, making the call, sending the email, saving the money, saying no to the shortcut. These don't feel like victories, but when repeated, they build the kind of life most people will never have, not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't stay consistent long enough. Repetition rewires the mind. At first, it's hard. The new routine feels awkward. Your old habits pull you back. But repetition is how you reprogram your thinking. It's how you move from resistance to rhythm. What feels like effort now becomes second nature later. But only if you keep showing up. That's the secret, not talent, not motivation, but showing up when it's no longer fun. Doing the reps when nobody's counting, staying the course when others quit to start something new. There's a kind of compound power that lives in repetition. In the beginning, it looks like nothing's changing, but underneath the surface, momentum is building. Your skills are sharpening, your confidence is growing, your mindset is strengthening, and then one day, what once felt impossible becomes easy. What once required willpower becomes your default. That's the reward for staying in the repetition long after others gave up. The problem is, the world has trained people to chase quick, to chase easy, to want results without the repetition. But there is no shortcut to excellence. There is no hack for mastery. There is only the grind, the consistent, daily, unseen, often boring grind. And that's why most people never make it, not because they're not smart, not because they're not capable, but because they keep restarting. They chase the thrill of new and never commit to the depth of repetition. When you understand this, your entire approach changes. You stop asking for excitement. You start asking, what's the one thing I can repeat today that brings me closer? And then you do it. Again and again. You don't need to be extraordinary. You need to be consistent. That's what builds trust in yourself. That's what builds a life of results. Repetition isn't just a tactic. It's a transformation strategy. It's how you take a dream and turn it into a reality, one small act at a time. While others are still starting over, you're building deeper. And the deeper you build, the higher you rise. Life will hand you 2 kinds of pain, and you will not escape both. One is the pain of effort, the pain of discipline, of sacrifice, of doing what's hard. The other is the pain of regret, the pain of wishing you had, the pain of looking back, knowing you could have but didn't. And what most never realize is this: you get to choose which pain you carry, but either way, there's a price to be paid. The 99% avoid effort, thinking they're dodging pain, but they don't realize they're just trading one pain for another, and the one they're walking into is far heavier. Effort is uncomfortable, no question. Waking up early when the bed is warm, hitting the gym when the body is tired, reading a book when the brain wants entertainment, saving money when the world encourages you to spend, none of that is easy. It takes mental grit. It takes vision. It takes making decisions in the moment that go against the grain of what feels good. But what you get in return is strength. Not just physical strength, but inner strength, confidence. Control, a life built on cause and effect, not just chance and hope. The pain of effort is sharp, but it fades. It's the ache in your legs after a long run, the burn in your brain after studying something new, the hunger you feel after skipping fast food for the first time in a while. It's the tension of doing what's necessary, even when you'd rather not. But that pain, it produces growth. It pushes you forward. Every time you endure it, you level up. You gain something, a skill, a habit, a layer of resilience. The pain of effort is the price of progress. And once you've paid it often enough, you start to feel proud of it. You welcome it because it reminds you you're on the path. Now, regret, that's a different pain. It comes later. It shows up quietly, slowly, and then all at once. You don't feel it when you skip the workout. You feel it years later when your health is gone and energy is low. You don't feel it when you waste an hour watching useless content. You feel it when you look back and realize you lost years to distraction. You don't feel it when you blow money on things that don't matter. You feel it when you're in debt, with nothing to show for it but old receipts and bad memories. The pain of regret doesn't strengthen you. It weakens you. It whispers, what if, and if only, in the quiet moments of your life. The 1% understand this, and that's why they lean into the effort, not because they like pain, but because they hate regret. They know the cost of not acting. They've seen where procrastination leads. They've watched others grow bitter with time, trapped in lives they never chose, all because they avoided temporary discomfort. So they make a different choice. They choose sweat now, so they don't have to cry later. They choose sacrifice now, so they don't carry shame later. They'd rather be sore than sorry, tired than trapped, pushed than passed over. Effort may make you uncomfortable, but regret makes you miserable. And it doesn't show up on the first day. It builds in silence. It waits. It lets you live with your distractions, your avoidance, your excuses. And then it arrives, fully grown, at a point where the time can't be recovered. That's the heaviest part of regret. It comes with no rewind button. You can't go back and relive your 20s. You can't redo the decade you wasted. You can't reclaim the moments where you knew better, but didn't act. That's a kind of pain that sits deep, and the more you ignore it, the louder it grows. The pain of effort, on the other hand, pays you back. You invest time in your health today, and it adds years to your life. You invest energy into your skills today, and it brings you opportunities tomorrow. You push through discomfort now, and it gives you pride that no one can take from you. That's the trade. Temporary pain for permanent gain, and the more you choose effort, the more momentum you build. You start to shift how you see yourself. Not just someone who has goals, but someone who follows through, someone who does the work, someone who doesn't run from hard things, but walks through them with intention. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid effort. They complain about being tired, about being stuck, about being unfulfilled, but when given the chance to act, they hesitate. Because effort feels hard now, regret feels invisible now, but that illusion wears off with time. One day, the consequences of their choices arrive, and they realize too late that what they avoided is now unavoidable. The price they didn't want to pay shows up with interest, and they are forced to live with the results they never meant to create. The people who win, the 1%, they flip the mindset. They see effort not as punishment, but as protection. Every early morning, every disciplined meal, every focused hour is a brick in the wall that guards their future. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. It's about choosing the discomfort that leads to strength over the comfort that leads to weakness. Because effort requires something from you now, but regret demands everything from you later. And the longer you avoid effort, the more regret you stack up like a debt that eventually comes due. If you want to know who you're becoming, don't look at your goals, look at your routine, look at your habits. Look at what you do when no one's watching. Because the truth is, we don't become what we dream about. We become what we do, what we repeat, what we commit to day in and day out. And this is the gap that separates most people from their potential. They spend their time thinking about change instead of becoming the kind of person who lives it. The 1% understands something most people miss. Identity is shaped by action, and consistent action carves out a future most only fantasize about. Every single day, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you're training yourself to be. When you wake up and reach for your phone, you're casting a vote for distraction. When you snooze the alarm, you vote for delay. When you eat whatever you feel like eating, you vote for short-term comfort over long-term energy. On the other hand, when you get up early, read something useful, work toward your goal even when it's hard, you're voting for discipline, for growth, for a future version of yourself that's stronger than the one you started with. And these votes, they add up, they stack, they build momentum, not in a day or a week, but over months and years. That's how transformation works, quietly, steadily, repetitively. The average person thinks about results. The few think about systems. They understand that results come from habits, and habits are the foundation of identity. You cannot live a successful life on an unsuccessful routine. You cannot rise to your goals if your daily decisions keep pulling you down. There's no shortcut around it. If your mornings are chaotic, your days will be reactive. If your evenings are wasted, your progress gets erased. That's why the 1% guard their routines. They know those small daily rituals are not just activities, they're identity shapers. They're reminders of who they've decided to become. It's not about doing something dramatic once. It's about doing something valuable consistently. Anybody can eat clean for one day. Anyone can go to the gym once. Anyone can read a chapter of a book. That's not impressive. What's rare is the person who does it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and again next week. That's what builds character. That's what builds capability. It's the accumulation of those ordinary actions that leads to extraordinary outcomes. The world is full of people who want change but live in patterns that contradict everything they say they want. They say they want to get in shape, but they live in the pattern of convenience. They say they want financial freedom, but they live in the pattern of impulsive spending. They say they want to become leaders, but they live in the pattern of distraction. Wanting is not enough. Only action counts. Only repetition matters. Only the decisions that get made when no one is clapping will shape the version of you that eventually earns the recognition. What the 1% have mastered is not talent, it's alignment. Their routines match their values. Their daily choices reflect their future goals. They've built a system that works even when they're tired, even when they're uninspired, even when life gets heavy. They don't wait to feel motivated. They trust their systems to keep them on course, and that trust is earned. It's built over time by showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That kind of consistency develops an unshakable self-respect. The kind of confidence you can't fake, can't borrow, and can't find in a motivational quote. You become your habits. You become your choices. You become your routine. Every hour spent scrolling instead of learning is a piece of your future slipping through your fingers. Every dollar spent on impulse instead of invested in growth is an opportunity delayed. Every excuse repeated becomes a belief, and every belief repeated becomes your identity. That's why it's not just about what you do, it's about what you allow. Because whatever you tolerate, you train. You train your mind, your body, and your environment to operate on autopilot. And unless you interrupt the cycle with intention, the pattern will own you. People often ask, why can't I stay consistent? The answer is almost always the same, because they're trying to build a new result without becoming a new person. And you cannot outperform the person you believe yourself to be. If you still see yourself as undisciplined, you'll sabotage the very systems you're trying to create. That's why your routine must include not just action, but reflection. You've got to examine what you're becoming. Is your daily life taking you closer to the version of yourself you admire or further away? Because life doesn't pause while you figure it out. Every day it's shaping you. Whether you act or delay, grow or shrink, show up or make excuses, your habits are voting on your behalf. The reason only a small percentage ever experience massive transformation is because they understand this truth early. They take responsibility for the ordinary moments. They realize success is not found in rare opportunities. It's hidden in consistent effort. They stop chasing intensity and start cultivating consistency. And when the noise of the world tries to pull them off course, they go back to their routine, the one that built them, the one that anchors them, the one that reminds them that real power is found, not in occasional greatness, but in daily discipline repeated with intention and purpose. The difference between the 99% and the 1% isn't talent, luck, or background. It's mindset and, more importantly, consistent action. While most wish, hope, and wait, the few make the decision to live with discipline, to commit rather than just dream, to embrace the boring repetition that compounds into greatness. They understand that effort is painful, but regret is far worse. They don't run from the hard road, they choose it, because they know it leads somewhere worth going. And every single day, through their habits, their choices, their relentless pursuit, they cast votes for who they are becoming. The 1% do what others won't, and because of that, they get to live a life others never will.